Moving on to tracking technologies, which has been a really hot button topic this year. There's been a lot of activity. Three particular cases that I'll touch upon a little bit with Scott here is Honda, Todd Snyder, and Healthline. These are really interesting because not only do they start in California, but they have a larger effect in that they are focused on two critical things. One is cookies and tracking technologies, and having an improper function of that cookie or tracker is really easy for the AG or plaintiffs' counsels to see, but it's increasingly becoming a vehicle to kind of knock on the door for regulators. And once they knock on that door, they often are looking at other things. One theme that I think we saw through all three of these is they wanted to look at their vendor contracts to see if they had do not sell provisions in them. They wanted to look at, for example, with Honda, cost employee training. And this all really started because in each case there was something that was considered non-proper. With Todd Snyder and Healthline in particular, there was actually malfunction of their tracking tool or portal or do not sell portal against their website, meaning somebody tried to facilitate consent or opting out of consent and it didn't work. And in Honda and in, I believe, Healthline, Scott, keep me honest, there was also the issue of verification, where the amount of information required to facilitate a do not sell was considered too great compared to like what was actually needed to fulfill it, and more similar to what was typically required for other types of requests, like a deletion request. Scott, anything else you want to
Yeah.
add?
So, it's interesting when you look at these three kind of in parallel, and there's some obvious takeaways and some not so obvious takeaways. So, the Honda one that Val was just speaking about, where they're very critical, the regulator is very critical on the amount of information that was requested for certain of the CCPA rights versus others. And you think about the greater issue that we're dealing with, which is the collection and use of data under applicable law there, the CCPA. You can kind of take a step back, and maybe a rational thinker who doesn't live privacy every day would say, well, geez, is in the grand scheme of the risk that we're trying to regulate as a country, is that really of such importance that it would deserve regulatory regulator attention and then lead to a fine? I mean, myself, I would say, that's not really at the forefront of the risk matrix that we're looking at. When you read the regulators' materials, it's clear that that is very important to them. And lots of thoughts. We could spend an hour debating the importance of that information or not. But what I think it tells us is that every detail with respect to the application of any of these laws that you see in the top bullet is very critical to consider compliance with respect to risk mitigation. And so while Honda may have gotten, other things correct, they were criticized for that in a couple of other practices. And they ended up, reaching a settlement that now has the Honda brand on our slide here. And that is one takeaway from this, as we have, been evangelizing privacy for a long time, and our business colleagues, at times are exhausted by the dialogue and the amount of attention that's required and the disruption to the business. Every level of detail is needed especially when talking about the collection of website data and the use of website technologies.